Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Politics Now. We're talking about modern politics in modern America, and today we're going to be discussing why Trump and Biden are in a very, 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 very narrow competition with each other, and it's honestly a 50-50 split now for who not only wins the election, but who wins the popular vote. So let's get into that. So, right now, polling for 2024 is a very, very weird thing to see considering the past two elections that we've had, and especially since it's Trump. Trump historically has not done well in the polls at all. In 2016, he was down quite a bit, even when the election started. He was only up for maybe 2 weeks in the entirety of the polling done, and he really didn't pull that well at all. He got it close sometimes and was up for a little bit, but generally he was down single digits or high double digits. And it was really the same thing in 2020. 2020, he never got above Biden. He was always down in the high single digits, low double digits. And even before the election, when he gained some popularity, he was still down 7 points to Biden. And 2020 was actually a very, very close election in a lot of these states where Biden won these states by less than 1 point, where these were thousands of votes that changed the course of who won the state. And if those 1,000 votes changed for Trump's favor, he probably would have won the election. That's how narrow we're talking about. And 2020, Biden needed 7 points above Trump right when the election started to gain a very narrow victory over Trump while he was the incumbent president. And really wasn't very popular because COVID was happening and his popularity ratings were currently in the toilet. And Biden's popularity ratings were still relatively high. I mean, when he walked into office, he had pretty decent popularity ratings. I mean, for a while, his approval rating was a lot higher than his disapproval. And then the Afghanistan withdrawal happened, and yeah, everything went to shit. He has not have had a positive approval rating above his disapproval rating ever since the Afghan withdrawal, and it has not been looking pretty ever since. He's gone at his best to high single digits, and most of the time he's in mid to low double digits. And sometimes, even on a bad day, he'll hit high double digits where he's in like 20% at one point and 21%. Now, right now, he's at 15.6, which that's not very good. Your approval rating is almost in the 30s, and your disapproval rating is almost to 56%. If you're trying to get a re-election and you're trying to win the election against a former president who is very popular with his party and with independents and people in these important swing states, he also has a pretty good grasp of those people. And if you have this much of a disapproval rating, in which his disapproval rating is even worse in a lot of these swing states, where places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, he's hated there. And if you have a nationwide disapproval rating comparable to Jimmy Carter, you're not in for a fun time. And you can definitely see that with the polling, where traditionally Trump has really always been on the downside, where he very rarely gets to the top, but even when he does in 2016, he's up there by maybe a little bit under 1%, and he's up there for a week or two. But really, it has been a completely different story. It has been a constant brawl over who is going to be up in the polls. It was Biden for a little bit, and then Trump for a little bit, and then Biden again, and then Trump for a pretty long piece of time. He was up there for longer than all the segments that Biden has been up, and now we're back to Biden being up. And really, e- ever since last year, he Biden has really not been up by a lot. At best, he's been up by maybe a point, and currently, ever since last year, his best so far is being up 2 points, and that is not very good. At his all-time high in all of his polling, his highest rating was the fact that he was up 2.8 points above Trump. That is embarrassing. That even at his lowest point in 2024, he was only within 4 points of Trump. He is somehow doing 10 times, 2 times worse than he was at his worst point in 2020 than his best point in 2024. And he's been losing to Trump for quite a bit. And it's just a constant brawl over who is up in the general election polls, which, given that fact, and given that the general election polls are not really they're not really saying who's going to win the actual electoral college, because usually the Democrats are up in the polls and Trump doesn't really do well in the polls even when he does win. So the polls don't really matter for Trump, but they do matter now because it calls into serious question, can Trump win the popular vote? And Trump winning the popular vote would be a complete death blow to Joe Biden's campaign, because if a Democrat cannot get the popular vote, ever since 2008 when Barack Obama won, if they cannot get the popular vote, they are in for a rough time. And I mean truly rough, because they have that big city support. So getting the popular vote, that should be a necessary aim for winning the presidency and even having a chance to actually win it. So that should be a piece of cake. Biden should be up way more if he was actually running a competent campaign and was actually a well-liked president, but he isn't. He's barely above Trump right now, and most of the time he's below Trump or barely beating him, which, given the fact that they're trying to throw everything at Trump with indictment after indictment after indictment to try and sort of meet lower his approval ratings and give Biden a boost in the polls. Well, it's clearly not working, because Biden is only beating him by around a point, and most of the time he's beating him by less than that. And Trump is even beating him by a lot more. Trump's highest in the polls is actually higher than Joe Biden's high. I mean, Trump Trump's high and Biden's high is only a point 0.3 difference, which, given the fact that Trump doesn't do well in the polls at all and usually is doing pretty shit in the polls. I mean, 2020 and 2016 weren't exactly Trump highs in the polls. Even when he won in 2016, he was still way, way, way down in the polls. And of course, he lost the popular vote, but still won the election. So Trump doesn't need the popular vote. These polls could be Biden +7 again, and he would still have a decent shot at winning the presidency. But the fact that they're not even close to Biden's 2020 numbers, where he barely won a lot of these states, that really calls into question, can he actually win? And Trump, he might have a pretty big advantage over Biden, because if Biden is only polling at plus barely 1 point over Trump, and Trump is still maintaining a consistent lead over Biden in during a lot of the polling, which he was never able to do in 2016 and 2020. Well, what states are up now? Because you have the swing states like Wisconsin, you have Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. Well, if Trump is doing this well in the polls, where Biden is not even close to his 2020 numbers, and he isn't even close to Hillary Clinton's numbers in 2016, where she lost, really, what states are up for grabs now? Because if Trump and these polls are to be believed, then places like New Hampshire, Virginia, and Maine at large, they might become competitive. And they might actually be a tough time for Biden to win, because, a lot of the polling out of these states, there's not generally a lot of polling, but when there is polling, as more and more time goes along, Trump continues to gain footholds in there. I mean, New Hampshire is a likely Democrat state. It is pretty much a Democrat state that has some Republican tendencies, and they do have their Republican governor, but they're not, they're not completely off the table for Republicans. They can still win. It's just not very likely. Well, that's completely different now because apparently this is from MSNBC. They Biden and Trump are only within 7% of each other for New Hampshire, and Biden is only at 48%. And this is one poll from a left leaning outlet. So if that's New Hampshire, where usually last year for Biden, where 2020, he was up well into double digits in New Hampshire, and Trump didn't really have any chance of winning New Hampshire or even making it competitive. But now he's making it competitive, which really calls into question what about Wisconsin? What about Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada? Are all these states actually pro Trump, or are they going to be competitive? Because if polling like this continues and it is accurate, and it paints a very grim picture for Biden where it really calls into question, can he actually win the general election and the popular vote? Because if he loses the popular vote, he's going to have an infinitely harder time at winning the general election. And even if Trump loses, the fact that he won the popular vote, that will be a win for Trump. Even if he loses the presidency, even if he loses the electoral college, if he loses that but wins the popular vote, it still shows that he won in the end of the day. And it doesn't matter if Biden wins narrowly, he still wins. Where now that is a real possibility. And if he wins the popular vote, he has a far, far greater chance of winning the presidency because Trump winning the popular vote, that's not really necessity for Trump because Trump, he doesn't need to win the popular vote. He's proven that he doesn't need the popular vote to actually win. And Democrats, they have their major city holds where they pretty much have a stranglehold over the popular vote. Well, looking at this polling, it really doesn't seem like that's the case anymore because Trump might actually gain the popular vote with high turnout because Biden, he might actually have pretty low turnout because a lot of Democrats don't like him. A lot of independents who would normally vote for Democrats, they also don't like Biden. And if Biden were to die and Kamala Harris would take his place, Kamala Harris is polling even worse to Biden. Kamala Harris is so hated that if they had to choose between Biden or Harris, most people would pick Biden. I don't think a single person on planet Earth or in America would actually say, I prefer Harris over Biden because Biden is a complete mental patient and he doesn't really do anything outside of I don't know, maybe piss his pants or something like that. I mean, he's like as old as dirt. But Kamala Harris, she's mentally sound, but that's not really a good thing. That just means that she knows what she's doing is bad and her policies are complete garbage and most people she does that annoying Hillary Clinton laugh where most people hated that in 2016, but I guess she didn't get that, so she does this annoying cackle and a ton of people hate her. So if Biden dies, Democrats are going to have a infinitely harder chance at winning 2024, especially showing that Biden is barely beating Trump in a lot of these polls where Trump doesn't even do well in the polls. If you include Kamala Harris into these polls, Trump is beating her by 3 or 5 points in all of the polls, where Biden, he just really has nowhere to go, and he's going to have to either make major changes or he's going to have to work his ass off to get the not only the nomination with no setbacks whatsoever because there still are a decent amount of people who support the other candidates and a lot of independents who also secretly support the other candidates, kind of like RFK. So he needs to work on that, and he needs to work his ass off if he wants to win the popular vote and the general election, because Trump is putting up a good fight. He is pulling out all the 2016 stops, and he is going hard and fast, and he is ready to kick some ass. So, if you think Biden could win, leave that in the comments below. If you think Trump will win, leave that in the comments below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.